I need to actually understand what they're saying. And then my job is to say, how do I build a solution for the actual problem they have? If someone tells you there's something wrong with your business, they're usually right. If they tell you how you should fix it, they're usually wrong.
Today in the studio, we have Arel Moodie. Arel has been named one of America's top entrepreneurs by Inc. magazine, a co-founder of the profound Mastermind Group. He's spoken at the White House twice, on the TEDx stage 3 times, and even been acknowledged by President Obama. Most recently, Arel was a part of the Syracuse Surge Accelerator for his company TalkADot, which is a third-party system that allows for real-time reviews to aid in lead generation for professional speakers. Arel, excited to have you on the show.
James, man, I'm super excited to be here, man. You know, it's always wonderful when you see someone do an intro and you just get engaged in the person giving the intro, and they're talking about yourself. So you are doing a great job. You're kicking it right out the gate, my friend.
All right, well, I appreciate that, Arel. You know, I've known you for a long time, and you have so many different things that you can talk about, and I've seen you do so many different things. So actually coming up with questions and thinking about what to even talk to you about has been actually a real big challenge. I was like, we can just talk about anything, really. But I want to talk about adult development theory. What is adult development theory? And I don't know, let's just get into it.
I found out about adult development theory some years ago, and it was by far the most eye-opening piece of research that I've ever read, understood. And what's wild about it is most people haven't even heard of it. So the fact that you haven't heard of it, you're not alone. It is this really small slice of academia. But basically what it shows us is that we always look for ways to make sense of the world, right? We think about personality types. How do we make sense of people in their personality type? We think about generational data. How do we make sense of people based on like how old they are? What adult development theory actually does is it measures maturity. So we all as humans pass through these predictable and sequential stages of development. That's why we can look back at periods of our time and say, that past version of me almost seems like a completely different person. It's still me, like I know it's me, but it feels like it's a different person. So what adult development theory does is it's taken 60 years of research and hundreds of thousands of data points and proven, regardless of regardless of demographic, gender, where you're born, language spoke, inner city, rural, doesn't matter at all. All humans pass through these predictable and sequential stages of development. And each stage has different fears, strengths, characteristics. And as a kind of summary to kind of grasp it all is, if you've ever said, I make sense of the world just differently from someone else, but maybe they make sense of the world in a way that related to you from a past version of yourself. You can actually understand how people make sense of the world, how you make sense of the world. And what I think is so beautiful about this work is when you look at it in terms of like organizational structure, I can look at you and say, what's your next area of development? Where do you need to grow? Because if I understand these stages, which I'm happy to go into, you know where you are and you know where you're going. And I think that's the most beautiful part. Personalities don't change, generations don't change, but your stage of maturity does.
Well, let's get into it. What are the different stages?
Yeah. So there's technically 9 stages.
Okay.
Technically. I don't go into all 9 stages because there's what's called pre-conventional stages, conventional stages, and post-conventional. I focus most of my time on the 4 conventional stages for this reason. Pre-conventional are typically people who are, they have like some type of adult development disability. So they're typically bound to someone else. So are they adults? Are they humans? 100%. It's pre-conventional. Then you got the conventional, which is about 85% of America. The world. I said America, the world. And then you have post-conventional, which is about 10 to 15%. So those are the people that fall into the Gandhi categories. And like, do they exist 100%? Are there a lot of them? No. So the 4 stages that I focus on is what's called the self-centric stage. That's the first stage. So let me get quick background. Adult development starts after child development. So child development theory, most people are aware of that. That goes about to 1821-ish. This is where adult development theory starts. We all start in the self-centric stage. The next stage is called the group-centric stage. The next stage after that is called the skill-centric stage. And then the final stage is called the achiever stage. Now, the achiever stage is kind of like, at least in Western society, That's like the goal, right? To achieve the things, do all the things, right? But what's fascinating, and I'm happy to talk about each individual stage, is if you actually understand what this pathway is, you can understand yourself, where you've been and where you're going, and those around you much more deeply.
Okay. This is going to be a very fascinating conversation here.
Yeah.
Well, let me just start with this idea. Why would someone even want to think about life this way? And why would I even want to pursue development? There's always the old dog you can't teach an old dog new tricks kind of thing. You get child development. I think for most people understanding, they hit 21 and that's pretty much it. They don't really develop, or they don't see development, or they don't chase development.
Yeah.
So why, maybe we'll start with the why. I always love starting with why should we even be thinking about this kind of theory?
Because it creates organization out of chaos. I think what we are trying to do, if we're trying to succeed in life at the best level possible, is we want to try to take something that seems chaotic and messy and make sense of it. And the people who are most successful, I think, are able to take what others might see as chaos, disorganization, fractured all this, and they can actually see the patterns. And I think when you see the patterns, you can better understand, oh, this is why I get upset when I'm around these kinds of people. I now know why that's happening. I can do something about it. Oh, I understand why this energizes me, why this deflates me, why this gets me angry, why this, we've all had those showers at like 1 a.m. where we're reflecting on the day and we're like, I should have said this. And it's like, I shouldn't be thinking about this at 1 a.m, right? I should be going to sleep. I should be just enjoying myself. So if we can actually better understand how our brain works, life doesn't seem as chaotic anymore, and then life actually becomes more beautiful.
I think that's so important, especially in today's world. I feel like a lot of people are dealing with chaos and either self-induced chaos or just the world is chaotic. What would be your advice to someone who is thinking that their life is in chaos? Like, is there hope for them? Like, what's the first step?
Yeah, so it's all about the journey of introspection, right? The journey of personal development. So some people are lucky. They just nail it. They just nail life. They wake up and they're crushing it, right? But I think if you look into any modality, like any personal development, whether it's spiritual, whether it's scientific, that will help you create a clearer sense of self, right? So for example, the very first stage is called self-centric. What are the characteristics of this first stage? So when we first start the game, it's about us. I want to figure out, how do I get what I want from everyone else? And what I learned how to do is how to play the game. I learned that, what is it that I think James wants from me? And how do I match myself to him? Not because I genuinely care. It's because this has value to me. So it's that what's in it for me stage, the with them, right? So a lot of what I want to do is I want to get as much as I can. I want to be as successful as I possibly can, but not for necessarily altruistic reasons. It's like, I want to help other people. I care about that. But what I really care about is myself. And we all start there. So what's fascinating about adult development theory is, though I mentioned there's all these stages, what I didn't mention is that you don't have to move out of a stage. There's called vertical growth and horizontal growth. So vertical growth is when you move from one stage to the next and your maturity changes. Horizontal growth is when you just get better at the stage you're in. And you can get better at only caring about yourself and only caring about what your needs are, and then die. There's no rule says that you have to move to the next stage. But if I can understand that, like, for example, let's say I have a new hire, and it's like, I just want them to get this, success mindset and all that stuff. And it's like, it's too early. They're still trying to get themselves situated and solidified. So if you try to jump them from the self-centric stage all the way to the achiever stage, which has a whole different set of rules and thoughts, which typically, like, an owner, CEO of a company is not always, but typically can be in that stage. They want to get them to think like that, but they're trying to make them jump too far. It's like someone who's never run before, and you're like, we're going to start with a marathon. It's too big of a jump. You got to start with a mile. So knowing where they are, you can see when it shows up for them. And then you can go, okay, I can see this self-interested aspect showing up for them. Instead of getting angry or frustrated, you can understand that. And then you can learn how to speak to them in a way that will yield more results. For example, my favorite phrase for someone in the self-centric stage is, how has that been working for you? Okay. So someone comes to you, I got a problem. This person does this and they did that. And, like, what I'm going to do is next time when they say this, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to let them know that they can't do that to me. Now, what you want to maybe say is, don't do that. But if I'm self-centric, if you tell me I can't do something, that makes me want to do it. That's the exact reason why I'll do it. So instead of pushing someone in the wrong direction, even though you think it's the right direction, you simply say, have you tried this before? That's how I am. How has that been working for you? Now, here's the funny thing. If they identify for themselves that it's not been the most effective way to deal with others, opportunity for change exists. If they go, that's who I am, that's how it's going to be, then it's like, good luck. And if you've ever tried to change someone's opinion who's really resolute about something, good luck.
Yep. I love all of that, and that 100% resonates with me. So I'm a new business owner, and I've been doing this for like 6 years, but I'm still stumbling my way through this and trying to figure it out. And I think a lot of this relates to what I have to deal with, or what I try to work on. So whenever I get stuck, so I hire someone new. And I'm like, okay, we're going to do this. And then I'm super jazzed about having that someone new. And I'm like, we're going to do this, and you're going to achieve this, and this is going to be great. And I'm going to push you. And then it's like they inevitably fail because I'm pushing them, I think, too far. And I'm not giving them a chance to win and get settled and understand the brand that like I've been living for 13 years and they've been living for like 2 days,
Right,
but
right.
like I expect it all. So, I mean, what would be your advice to like a leader to like figure this all out? Like, how do you work with a new employee to get them to where you want them to be?
So the first thing is to understand what is their role. That's question number one, right? Because self-centric actually in certain roles are phenomenal, specifically like sales roles, right? So like if you achieve these goals, these are all the things you're gonna get, right? And that might be very motivational in that role. But if it's a different role, the next stage of development is called group centric. Now, group centric basically is identified the group's identity is my identity. Okay. So this is where like you see like a Harley Davidson person. Like if you think of a Harley Davidson person, there's an image in your mind of who that person is, right? Now, there's lots of people who are interested in it, but there's a group think that this group represents me and I represent them. So what I would recommend all leaders to do is to, number one, what is your culture? And like people use this term and it's like very just like, oh, we have a culture of like caring. But it's, like when you come here, there's a vibe, right? When I walked into this room, there's a certain vibe. And what I would actually spend more time doing in the beginning is obviously learning the technical aspect, but emphasizing the group dynamic. Like we're a team. This is like you're a part of us. We're a part of you, represent us. We represent you. It's actually more beneficial to spend time bringing that person into the group centric thinking versus what some people typically do is jump to either the skill centric thinking or the achiever thinking. And that might be too big of a jump. I have to first have what's called psychological safety. I have to feel, because a lot of times like you work at like a resale job and you're like, we're a family here. And you're like, I know you'll fire me like you don't care about me. Like it's just lip service that sounds really good. But if you've ever been part of a group of people where you're like, no, these are my people, it's a totally different ballgame. And I think if organizations, when they first hire, can be, one, aware of the role, but then two, how do I help this person get ramped up on what we do here, but then the culture of what we do here? So part of that is being able to actively define it. I'll give you a very simple example. I just had a retreat for my tech company, TalkADot. We went over our values. Most values are completely irrelevant, right? They suck. But one of the values we had is we don't sacrifice short-term benefit. Excuse me. We don't sacrifice long-term benefit for short-term gain. Meaning we rather lose in the short to gain in the long run. And that is a cultural thing, because what that means is if a client comes in and it's after the 30-day refund period and they say, I still want a refund. Now, technically, we can be like, no, you can't get it. You're out of the refund period. We did what's right. But then you got to think about, well, how mad is that person going to get? What kind of trash are they going to talk about you? What's the brand? I would rather lose that like 1 year of their membership over this continued built beautiful relationship. So teaching that type of value is important. And I think you'll actually see you'll get more out of people when they're bought into, this company isn't just where I exchange time for money. This is where I create my sense of self, my group.
So what are some of the characteristics of the stages?
So, we were talking a little bit about the self-centric. It's about me. The group-centric is my identity is the group. But the next stage is skill-centric. Now, here's what's fascinating. Skill-centric, what you do and who you are not separated. So you actually want to be a part of a group. So let's say, for example, I'm going to make this up. I get into video production because I'm like, I think I can make a bunch of money doing that. That seems like a lot of fun. People need that. I think that would be a great way for me to spend my time. So you say, I want to become a video production person. So that's a self-centric reason to get started. Group-centric is you start finding the people who philosophically align with you. Like, there's people who do video this way. That's not the way that we do it. Those are hack jobs. We like to do it this way. It's pure. And then maybe you build a company around it. But then what happens is you go to skill-centric. Skill-centric is I need to separate myself from everyone else based on a very specific skill. Maybe I want to become the best sound engineer in the world. Maybe I want to become the best, podcast audio engineer. Like, I can niche it down as much as I want, but what I do and who I am is pretty much the same thing. And I become obsessed with my skill. You don't have to force me to learn about my skill. You don't have to push me down. I want to learn about it, not so that I can get necessary personal gain from it, because I love the skill so much, right? And again, you can spend your whole life in any one of these stages. But the final stage of the conventional stage is called the achiever stage. Now, what happens in the achiever stage is you realize no matter how good you are at the thing you do, you can't do it alone. You can't possibly, it doesn't matter how great you are. You've got to develop other people. So two very, very specific characteristic traits of the achiever stage is I want to build other people up. You get joy in seeing other people get developed and seeing them become great sound engineers and seeing them become great, visual medium experts or whatever it might be. But then you become obsessed with goal setting. Goal setting becomes totally different at this stage. So for example, I have to have a 5,000 square foot house with 5 bedrooms and 7 baths. Why? Because I do. There's no there's no objective reason, but you set these goals. You set revenue goals, you set team goals, you set life goals about everything. So you become very, very goal obsessed. You become very, very developed about people. And for the first time with the achiever stage, you can see timeline differently. You see 10 years in the past and 10 years in the future, almost like you see today. So you go, oh my gosh, if I keep doing this, I'm going to lose all my friends. Who's going to want to be around me? If I keep eating like this, I'm going to be, your ability to see the future versus I'm just trying to make it till Friday. I'm just trying to enjoy today changes. So we move through these different stages. So we're the same person, but who we are in each one of these stages of maturity are very, very different.
So you have a new venture, TalkADot.
Yeah.
It's a new startup that you're doing, a tech startup. First of all, I just want to continue this. So how do you apply what we're talking about with development theory into what you're doing with TalkADot?
Yeah, so it's really, really cool to be able to take these principles and apply it internally and externally. So I think one of the things that we do, we're very big on this idea of how do we build community within our user base. So we use very specific terms, like we call our users unicorn speakers, right? We have a phrase. And the reason why we do that is we genuinely believe, well, one, the kind of cool thing, I don't know, cool, but basically we want to be a unicorn company. We think our speakers are the best, so they're different, so they're unicorns. So there's a tie in there, right? But what's important about that is with my knowledge of how the group-centric thinking works, I want speakers to say, yeah, the type of speaker that uses TalkADot, that's the type of speaker I am. So we talk about people who are not afraid to get feedback. Our users are people who want to make a difference, and it's not just about getting applause. We talk about lifting while you climb. We want to do good while others do good. So by constantly reinforcing the values that I have as a person, our goal is to make our speakers and our users, who are our ideal customer professional speakers right now, learning and development, to go, those are my people. So I can use the knowledge of this to build not just, I hope, a good experience for our users, but an actual experience. And then we can do that internally. When we hire people, we're looking at what stage do we think this person is? What stage is our executive team in? And that helps us inform whether we think they'll be a good fit for the team. When we just did a new round of hires, we brought in 2 people. So when we brought those folks in, I had to really ask myself, for the role that they're going to be in, do I think where they are matches it? And it helped us. We had over 110 people apply for a job, which was amazing. And we were able to find what I generally think is her name is Marissa. She's going to be an amazing addition to our team. But the reason why we were able to choose her is because she just nailed all of the aspects of the skill and the mindset that we needed. But by having this rubric, we can apply it not only to our user base, but our internal company.
For a listener who wants to apply a rubric like this, is there a set of questions, or is it something I can find on Google? Like, how do I even go about
Yeah,
coming
yeah.
up with this?
Yeah, that needs to be created. It doesn't, it's not, oh, I wish there was like, here's a PDF, go to this website and download this PDF. But one of the things you're looking for is patterns, right? So anyone can fake the funk once or twice. But if you actually can get patterns, so actually if you take any assessment as a quick sidebar, what assessments do is they ask you the same question in lots of different ways, because what they're trying to do is look for a pattern on how you answer this particular question. So I might say, do you like toast? How do you like your toast? When do you like your toast? Do you like bread? Do you like, so it's like, why you keep asking me about toast is the assessment is looking for consistency. So one of the things I might do is think about, okay, what type of personality type do I need? So my company's a virtual company. We have people literally all over the place. So we need someone who's going to be a self-starter. We need someone who's going to have that autonomy, right? So we want to ask questions like, what kind of work environment do you prefer? Which ones do you hate? If your friends were going to say, what kind of work environment do you think they work best in? What do you think they would say? If I talk to your last boss, how do you think they would describe you? Then, you get their references. So you ask them, how do you think they would describe you? Then you go to the boss and say, how would you describe this person? And I want to see, does it lock sync? Do I think the way people perceive me actually match the way people perceive me? And is this the type of characteristics that I would want? So if you can actually think of different ways to ask the same question to get toward your ideal hire, you'll actually find that if there's inconsistencies, it's probably a red flag. But if it's just consistent after consistent, the chances of you hiring the right person go up really high.
That's super interesting. One of the biggest hurdles I had was hiring, figuring out how to hire, what to look for when hiring. And I think a lot of viewers and listeners to this and just people in general that have companies probably really struggle with hiring, especially when they're starting. When I first started, I was like, you like me? You want to work with me? Like, okay, you're hired, right? Like that was literally like our first 3 hires.
Yeah.
And then I started hiring, well, maybe I want gunners or, people that are really excited about being here. And then maybe I want really, really talented filmmakers, or maybe I want just really cool people. I kept trying to figure out exactly what I'm looking for when hiring. And then finally, we're still working on it. It's always evolving, but we were trying to actually write down, this is how we hire. We have a 3-stage hiring process. This happens, this happens, this happens. What either advice, or if you don't mind sharing your hiring process, because I think it's so important and something that isn't talked enough about.
Yeah. So I'll tell you a couple of things that we've done. And my co-founder is a woman named Pokin Young. She's brilliant. She's brilliant. And she kind of spearheaded this part, and it was just absolutely like elegance. So the first thing that you do is you talk about the values of the company first, right? A lot of people say like, are you looking for a fun environment where you can make a lot of money? No, it's like you want to repel the wrong people first and then attract, so it's called crystallize and polarize. You want to polarize, move away the bad people, crystallize. So if you like an environment, and it has to be real and not generic, right? So that's number one. But number two, you want to give them tasks within the application. So for example, for ours, we said, part of your application process is there's 3 tasks that you need to accomplish. Task 1, task 2, task 3. Please email us as part of your application telling us which priority would you put 1, 2, and 3? Why would you put them in priority? And how would you tackle them? So it was a use case of what they would actually do, right? So imagine, and I know nothing about videography, so I'm going to butcher this, right? So imagine like you have a camera person, right? And you're like, you take a normal scenario that your camera person might be in. You're in a situation and maybe like your battery's about to die and you're filming something, right? And at the same time, you've got to pull up the teleprompter for the next thing, right? Like you give them like, there's 4 things that are happening, right? Like a scenario. How would you handle it? In what order and why? So the first reason you do this is because like 60% of people won't even do that. They won't even they'll just send you their resume and be like, I'm interested in this job. Okay, so you didn't read the job application because I told you exactly what you need to do. Number 2, did they even like do it in any kind of effort-based way? I would do 2, 1, and then 3. Let me know what's next. I was like, well, walk me through it. So I think if you actually think about what's a scenario that this person would be in, and then make them critically think on how they would handle it. And I recommend like giving 1, 2, and 3, then stank rank, how would you prioritize them? Why would you do those and why? Then you'll be able to see, does this person have the thought process that I would want in this role. And you'll eliminate a lot of just generic resumes, and you'll get to really, really good people.
I think what's really interesting about that, just to kind of play off of my own experience, my first thought when you were saying that was like, well, no one would apply then. And they would see that as too much homework, and they don't want to, that's just too much, and I want to scare away some great applicants. But now that I've, gone through this process, I'm like, well, I don't want that kind of person anyways. So it does kind of weed them out if they're not willing to put a little bit of effort in the beginning. But I do feel like new entrepreneurs that are trying to get people in the door know they need to fill this space out. But a bad hire can be so much worse than the benefit of even a good hire. So,
and I think good hires actually want to take that challenge on. They actually want to, right? Like if I was someone who actually was about that life, right? I'm trying to be a contributor. Because if we're a group-centric organization, which we are, like we want people to feel like they're part of a group. We're not like, you do your job, I do my job, and then we'll make some money and we'll be good. So if our culture is, hey, I want to see how you think, I want to see how you do this, and you're like, no, that's too much work, you're not going to be a culture fit, right? So you probably know this, and every entrepreneur knows, like the cost of hiring the wrong person is astronomical in terms of time waste, because you're training a new person, but it's not like your other work stops, right? You still got to do the other projects. So I would actually recommend repelling 90% of people and getting 10 solid applicants. So I said like over 100 people applied, but we only had like 10 good ones, right? Like lots of people applied, but they weren't good. So getting down to that, we had like 4 people who were pretty good. So it was really, really challenging to choose. But I would rather get 4 solid people than like 100 sucky people.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah.
You've had different businesses throughout your life, but I do want to talk about TalkADot. This is like a new adventure for you. And, I don't know that, I know have had a lot of experience in businesses, but with TalkADot specifically, I find it's super interesting because you're known as a speaker. You've been speaking for, I was trying to put some math on it earlier.
17 years.
17 years.
17 years, yeah.
And you're taking that and you're now creating a company that evolves around that.
Yeah.
So, how has that transition been? What are the trials and tribulations of just starting a company?
Yeah, so a tech company is a totally different beast than anything that I've ever done. So I've basically been in a service-based industry, right? So I've been a professional speaker, I've done coaching, I've done events, I've done mastermind. I do mastermind groups, right? And that's a service-based. What's uniquely different about a tech company is in a service-based business, you are the expert and you are now being hired to provide your expertise. In the tech business, you're constantly not the expert. So you've got to you have to constantly do customer development and customer surveys all the time. I have to constantly go, how are you using our tool? Do you like this? So you actually have to almost take an emotional step backwards and go, not just metaphorically, I don't know anything and I'm here to learn, but no, actually, everything is an assumption. So you build something and you put it out there and you think it's going to be great, and then it can fall very, very much flat. So I think one of the first things is doing customer discovery, talking to other speakers. I understand the speaking industry very, very, very deeply because I've been in it. So this tech company came out of the desire of wanting to solve the problems I had that nobody else was solving. And my team and my incredible co-founders were much, much smarter than me in their respective product, graphic, technology spaces. We wanted to say, well, this is a huge vertical. Like there's a ton of learning and development. There's tons of conferences. There's tons of speakers, but no one's really servicing this industry with specificity. So we think that's a huge opportunity. But it's so different versus being, hey, I'm hiring you to be the speaker because you're the expert on the topic. Come tell us your expertise, versus going, we're trying to build this thing. Would you like this? And then the biggest thing that I learned, which is really fascinating, is whenever someone tells you what they want, they're usually wrong, right? Their job is to tell you what their problem is. Your job is to figure out how to make the solution to that problem. So people say, because people say this all the time, I'd really love if your tool did like this thing. So then what you normally feel obliged to do is go, okay, I'm going to go build that. And then you build it, and then they're like, not using it, or they don't want it. And you're like, but you said it. What you really have to do is they say, oh, I really want to do this. Oh, why would you want it to do that? What are you hoping that's going to do for you? I need to actually understand what they're saying. And then my job is to say, how do I build a solution for the actual problem they have? And I think there was a quote that says, if someone tells you there's something wrong with your business, they're usually right. If they tell you how you should fix it, they're usually wrong.
I like that.
Yeah.
What are your goals with TalkADot and how do you achieve them?
So the goals with TalkADot is to become the #1 business tool building software company for professional speakers. We want the learning and development space to be much easier. If anyone's ever planned a conference or brought in a speaker, it's very fragmented. It's very difficult surfacing the right speaker. You've been to events, I'm sure, where the speaker sucked. And if you go to an event too many times where the speaker sucked, you probably don't come back. So finding the right speaker is very difficult. So our goal is to really solve all of the problems within the vertical stack of conferences and professional speakers. And ideally, we want to do it with a lean team. If we can keep our team to say 10, would be great. A little bit more than that would be great. But if we can get to a place where we're genuinely solving this problem, we think the learning and development space will be transformed. There's billions of dollars. I don't know what the actual number is, but it's a whole lot of money is put into conferences, learning and development, professional development, training. And if we can make that space easier, more efficient, quicker, faster, more delightful, I think we'll build something really special.
I've known you for a long time, like I said before. Not in a million years would I ever think that you would open up a tech company.
You're not the only one.
With apps and everything. Yeah. So, but what's exciting about that is there's probably a lot of people listening to this that would also never think that they would start a tech company. Do you encourage starting a tech company? Do you encourage them to even start a company? And what learning lessons have you learned that you would like to share?
Yeah, so starting a tech company is it's simple but not easy. So I want to there's a distinction between simple and easy, right? So simple is you find a problem for a specific group of people and you constantly ask them about the problem. You constantly understand the problem. If you actually deeply, deeply understand it, you're good. Where I see a lot of folks who are even interested in tech fail is they go, I know how to solve this problem. I'm really good at this. It's going to be amazing. And in the tech world, it's like, no, you're not, right? You're actually not. You'll know you're great at it when you hit this so it's called product market fit. When you hit product market fit, you can't stop customers from coming in. You don't have to do so much because it's such a good product that people are just rushing in the door, and you could almost stop. You shouldn't, but you could stop and it wouldn't stop. And until you get to something like that, there's a lot of work to be done. So I think one of the biggest challenges with the tech company is one, you have to be very humble. I think people say that word and go, yeah, I'm humble. You have to constantly admit you don't know anything, and you've got to talk to people and get feedback. And all of the information to succeed is out there. It's not like, and the tech industry is interesting because nothing's hidden. You can go on to YouTube right now and go to like SaaStr is a great YouTube channel, and they're giving you all the keys. It's just people don't want to drive that kind of car because it's an insane amount of work.
Awesome. Well, we wrap every podcast up with 3 questions here. What is your favorite book and why?
Ooh, my favorite book. I'm going to have to go with the book that started everything for me. So the book that started everything was Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Okay. You know what? That's actually one of the first books that really got me hooked on being an entrepreneur. Even though it's not necessarily about being an entrepreneur, but it just makes you think about the world a little differently.
To me, that was like, I always forget whether you take the red pill or the blue pill in the Matrix. I don't know. Whichever one you take to like get out of the Matrix, that book was like the blue pill, right? That was the one that I read it. And the concepts are like not, when you look back, they're not like, wow, but they are. So it's a weird dynamic. Elegance and simplicity are the same thing. I think it's a very simple book, but it's very elegant in how it can shift your mind. And for most people I meet, that's a big one.
Yeah. I mean, I think half the game is this mindset.
Yeah.
What keeps you passionate?
What keeps me passionate? I am inexplicably driven by trying to figure out what my best is. And if I keep driving to figure that out, I don't think I'll ever get bored of this thing called life.
What excites you most about Central New York?
We have the greatest gem of a place. I can meet the most successful people in terms of the tech space. You know, I got a guy named Chetty Hampson, who is amazing friend of mine and sold a very, very successful company, a TCG player, very accessible guy, right? You can get in touch with the mayor if you wanted to.
Yeah.
You are centrally located to so many places, and the people are quality people here. You know, I've been to many cities. I've been to every state in the country. I've been to every major city in the country with speaking. The quality of people here is high level, and the beauty of living here is so low key. It's the perfect combination for me.
Well, thanks, Arel. I think we covered a lot of different interesting topics here, and hopefully there's some good nuggets in there people can pull away from.
Yeah, thank you so much, James. I appreciate you creating a platform for folks in Central New York to rise and do really well.
Absolutely. So thanks again for joining us. If you want to find out more about Arel, you can check him out on LinkedIn, or you can go to arelmoodie.com, and be sure to check out In the Studio with 325 for more conversations with extraordinary people like Arel every Monday.
Highest quality video production team in Central New York. Get that on the camera.